everybody for watching, taking it back to the streets. My name is Andy Michaud.
John Frasco on Brass City Community TV on Tom Hill Live. Tonight's guest is BrianAtherton to discuss commercial real estate. Now it is time for Tom.
Thank you, Mr. John Frasco. We're here live at Brass City TV, as John said. I don't mean to be repetitive. Thank you for tuning into the program. Carrying on what I did at WATR for 35 years, and it's very nice to have Brass City TV in my corner. So welcome. Tonight's guest is BrianAtherton. As John said, he's a dual designee like myself, expert in commercial real estate, and he is from the Newtown area, owns his own company, and tonight we'll be talking about the International Council of Shopping Centers, which means retailers. So you'll enjoy knowing about the stores and where you like to shop. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome BrianAtherton.
Thank you, Tom.
Hello there, man.
Thank you. Hello.
Had lunch with you today?
Yes. Good to see you.
You too?
Thank you.
So at lunch, we talked about the trip we went to in New York. So maybe you ought to tell us a little bit about ICSC because you've been going to it for most of your career.
Yes. So the International Conference of Shopping Centers is a forum where all the retailers get together, discuss deals, discuss expansions, contractions, different types of corporate guidance on how earnings of stores and regions of the country expand. In Connecticut, we really had some really good conversations about some of the expansion that Connecticut has experiencing. So it was refreshing, and it's a great forum to be able to collaborate, get together, and really discuss the future of retail.
So I'd like you to explain the show floor, the booths, the scene, and how many miles we walked in one day.
Well, the Javits Center, so it was really cool because at the same time that ICSC was happening, the International Conference of Shopping Centers, you also had the AI Summit. So it was really cool to be able to get to speak with some of the participants of the AI Summit. So to have all of that happen at once was really, really interesting. But the Javits Center, if you haven't been there, it's huge. Lots of aisles. Retailers are displayed, which was interesting this time. They had 100 retailer row, which was very convenient for us to be able to go speak with, let's say, Chili's or let's say Darden Restaurants, or where they normally don't have that booth. So laid out in a very grid format, lots of aisles, lots and lots of rows, but it was really well organized and it was a really great event.
And how many miles did we walk?
I think about 12 and a half.
I love it. And somebody else said they left early. Steve Patton, a friend of ours, said he left early, and he said he did 8 miles. So,
Yes.
Because Brian and I were at a meeting this morning. What is the value of ICSC, and when did you start going to it?
So value is relationships. I would say anything in life that you want to succeed in or be the best at, you have to establish the best relationships. So first and foremost, I think this would be my 19th or 18th year, either attending the show or attending some of the pre-after show. So I like to go at least every other year if I can't go every year, or if all else fails, every 3 years, just to kind of get that refresh and understand what's happening with the changes in society and the changes in retail. So I'd say for about 19 years now.
And COVID kind of knocked out the International Council of Shopping Centers meetings for a while. How soon after COVID did you go back, and what's different about the retail business and the shopping center conference in your mind now?
Well, I'm a little different. As you know, I used to rep some certain tenants at Atherton Real Estate Advisors. We used to represent some national tenants. So we used to exhibit at the show. As you recall, I used to stop by our booth where we used to actually have a booth and exhibit.
Yes, I had shrimp cocktail.
Yes, and so I kind of got burnt out from the retail industry, and really it was this was a kind of my first time refreshed since COVID. So it was all new sort of beginnings, even though all the relationships with many of the retailers they're still in their positions and they haven't changed, but it was really my first time since COVID.
I haven't been lately either, so I have to even think about that. And to the boys in the booth, L1, L2, I want to make sure that John's mic is on because he's got a question. John Frasco, our announcer.
Yes, Brian, I got a question for you. What do you think the future of the brick and mortar retail establishments will be now that you see more people shopping online?
John, they're ever more important now than ever because it's all about the experience of retail. So we all know we can get things and we can get commodities for the best price, shipped in a very short period of time. But we still have to touch it. We still have to feel it. We still have to really be part of that to make that purchase, especially if it's a certain larger purchase. So very important to have the brick and mortar. Now, that has changed and will continue to change as populations change and densities change with housing initiatives and more densification of housing. So retailers will shift with that density. So there will always be brick and mortar no matter what, even if it's a drone delivering, there always will be brick and mortar.
Keep those drones out of my neighborhood. Give me a haircut. John?
I got one more. I saw something new concept. I think it was in Cheshire. They're now building residential areas and building retail establishments around that so that you have a community that has both your retail establishments and your housing all integrated into one. Do you see that becoming more popular, or is that just a outlier?
It's a great question. It will become more popular as there becomes more population in Connecticut. Connecticut is a very sprawled state with very large zoning, so 2-3 acre housing zones. So we don't have that justification for that retailer to be in that market, but with the creation of little densification of markets, there will be that demand, and that retailer hubbed, or that hub around that retailer will be ever so important. So yes, you'll see more and more of that as we create more and more denser housing developments.
Right, to the audience, sprawled means all spread out.
Yes.
And then the areas of densification would be like in Cheshire that you're talking about, 1,000 apartments next to the shopping center.
Yeah, let's not go 1,000, but 200 units, 300 units. I think strategic locations or strategically locating of TOD or transit-oriented developments, a big one. Locating housing and mixed-use developments that are accessible to trains and transit-orient is very important. I think that's a priority, at least from a location standpoint, and especially now the environmental laws have gotten better in our market in Connecticut. So, 200-300 units that you see in many of the 169 towns. 100 units here, 200 units here, directly off highways, locations that really make a lot of sense.
Speaking about highways, you had a lot of trouble getting over here from the Danbury area tonight. I had a lot of trouble getting back from Danbury. Do you ever see this I-84 corridor being fixed up? And also, highways, as you're mentioning, mean a lot to retailers.
I think we have not as good drivers these days because of distractions. So I think that give Connecticut a break. Our highway systems, yes, we're congested. But I do think, like many developments in retail, especially a gentleman that we had on SIOR panel, David Genovese, with his beautiful retail development and his office in downtown Darien, you'll see less need for parking, less need for traffic to go to and from work with autonomous driving and efficient driving, and the vehicle's parking somewhere, or your vehicle not parking all day and taking up a parking space, or driving. Believe it or not, ride sharing will become more and more popular as autonomous driving. I'm looking forward to it just for efficiencies, because I know how easy it is to be distracted, but I think a lot of what we deal with in Connecticut specifically are more distracted drivers because we have more of a peaceful peaceful rural setting, and that kind of gives you the ability to be distracted a little bit more, because you can't drive in Manhattan without being distracted for 1 second. So
that's true, but even coming across, and I know that there's been a lot of talk in the media about this, asking people not to camp out in the left-hand lane, and then I also see these trucks that are all driving the left-hand lane. They shouldn't be out there. So a lot of this congestion is to your point.
Yes.
And speaking about drive time, when you and I had lunch today at Chuck's Steakhouse in Danbury with the commercial brokers of Western Connecticut that we're both longtime members of, you talked about interesting drive times for different retailers, grocery stores, shoe stores, and how far the customer would drive to shop there regularly. Could you repeat that a little bit for the folks? I think that's an interesting thing that mom and pop shoppers might like to know.
Sure. So in my 26 and a half years of brokerage of commercial real estate and specializing at sometimes of tenant representation in retail real estate, and being a CCIM, a certified commercial investment member, I've learned very well what is called the trade area of a retailer. So every retailer has a different trade area, just like a trade of a carpenter, plumber, trade, TRADE, and the trade area of your typical grocery store. So in our markets, we have ShopRite, Stop and Shops. They're typically a 7-minute drive time
for the grocer.
So a quick service restaurant, a QSR, such as a McDonald's or a Burger King or one of those, will have a different trade area based on the market, based on the density of population. So Bridgeport will have a completely different trade area, maybe a 5-minute, 10-minute walking time than will be in Danbury, Connecticut, where it will be more of a 5-10-minute drive time. So trade areas will be different and will differentiate in every market and with every retailer.
And I want to go back to your CCIM pin in a minute, but you just made me think of something that was super important.
So back to trade area, if I may. So you see how Costco's are located every 20 minutes or so. You see how Bass Pro Shops are probably every hour and a half, 90 minutes or so. Those retailers know that they capture the interest that the customer will go and travel to their destination because they are within the trade area. So the retailers have done their homework and understand, and over the years have used all the technology at the fingertips that we use at CCIM to understand where that demand is and their trade areas. So they know it very well, but that's why retailers are spaced out differently based on what they sell and how they sell it.
And this is why I was thinking with the CCIM, this is why your training and software and learning about the markets is so darn important. And to that same statement, the CCIM organization, which you can tell us a little more about as well, has always had a booth at the International Council of Shopping Centers, and they always kind of said to us, maybe you, CCIM, should be working in retail. Can you expound on some of those thoughts?
Well, CCIM has had a booth. They've had a booth for quite some time now. CCIM Tech used to have a booth as well, but I would say that CCIM Tech is a different organization than CCIM, the membership organization, as I was very involved in leadership. But the technologies are used by many of the retailers. So I can't name individual names, but for the most part, your top 10 of your Fortune 100 retailers use CCIM's platform or what's called Site to Do Business in how to predict demand, right? So if population is growing or shrinking and employment is growing, employment is the driver of everything. So we can predict that expansion just like so the retailers use the same tools that we use for the good ones that understand it, but that is the Site to Do Business that CCIM has, that anyone can participate and buy a membership in that technology.
And since you and I have been going to these meetings for so long, what is your experience in all the seminars and the talks and the keynote speeches they have sometimes at Hartford at the regional? In New York, they had a whole underneath the Javits Center where you could go listen to any subject. Las Vegas as well. How interested have you been in the training sessions and the speaking? And you probably were a panelist at 1 or 2 times as well.
Yeah, I think education, as you know, Tom, in your successful career is most important. So whenever you can learn something that you can apply to your business, apply to life, and ICSC, just talking about ICSC, has had a tremendous value of years of speakers. This year, I didn't get a chance. The Javits Center was a little busy. I didn't get a chance to see and hear some of the keynote speaking, but they've had incredible speakers. I wish it was a little bit more intimate than it used to. I wish it was today, that like it used to be a little bit more intimate. If you want to take a tip, ICSC, I know you're working on it. Meaning it was done over a lunch. You can meet new spheres of influence and whatnot, but incredible speakers. But most important is understand how you can apply that education to your business. Don't try to remember everything. If you take 1 or 2 little simple things away, that's the most important thing of any education and any seminar is that value.
And to the booth, I want to just show this magazine on my camera. This is the ICSC magazine that you can get your hands on if you ever like to have a look at it. And it's Commerce plus Communities Today, and now they're talking about mixed use, mall to mixed use renovation, a reinvention. And Bruce, you're Brian. Would you kindly talk a little bit about our friends at the BL Companies and the party they had in what I think was $1 billion skyscraper with 4 floors? And this will kind of remind you of it and what the experience was walking across the street over to the Hudson Yards. What an amazing project. And to get in there and see this mall and go to this restaurant on the 4th floor. Wow.
Yes. So the shops, that would be the shops at Hudson Yards that BL Companies, through, as they typically do, an incredible holiday cocktail reception for many of their participants and affinity partners and relationships that they have. So incredible hospitality, incredible event, incredible venue. I think we were all guessing, we were all trying to guess the cost of that development. As you saw, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars of steel and just all the sophisticated structure systems of roof, and it was just amazing, and how it was decorated for the holidays was just incredible. But BL provides civil engineering, site survey, environmental, and they have offices from Maine to Florida, so they are a big player in the industry and one of the best engineers out there, engineering companies.
And they're employee owned too. But this is an example of mixing business with hospitality, which gets more people to come. And the show, we went all day Wednesday, but you could have came back on Thursday until 3 o'clock. And I couldn't this time, but I always like to go to the show from stem to stern, only because the next day it wasn't so busy and you could get to talk to people, because Brian's talking about relationships, etc. And at this point, I'd like to remind you, and maybe the booth can put this up again, this is the podcast that ICSC does, and what we're doing now is one of these podcasts. Our podcast will appear on ICSC from the smaller broker's point of view. And we cover most of Connecticut. We like to work together, although we're independent companies. And maybe you could talk about, Brian, from the top, the biggest mall people to the smallest people that might have been in a tiny booth, and who participates from the retailer side, and why they all show up from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, and if I may first, just I was not there the second day, where historically I would have loved to have been. I had a panel discussion at the University of Connecticut on the sunset of the Transfer Act, the legislation that we helped create several years back. But what I found most valuable was, because it was well attended, not over attended, not under attended, I didn't need the second day. I had all of my relationships, all of my, the value that I needed. But I would say that, the institutional, from institutional level to smaller retailer in just a couple different states, the consensus was that 2026 is going to be a growth opportunity for all, and there was rigorous discussion of expansion across the board. So as long as the country's employment, as long as employment data has been coming out, it's a little bit, people should watch, because employment drives everything. But as far as the consensus, so a lot of what I'm seeing is a lot of discussion of syndication partnerships, of institutions that have a hard time, even large, no matter if it's a publicly traded private equity, having a hard time finding a good deal. So by JVing or syndicating or coming together as partnerships and collaborating on deals, becoming more and more common, I'm seeing. So I think that's something that we will see in the fractional interest of real estate, as we're seeing that in everything in life. It's all about fractional interest, syndication.
And since you're mentioning, we were there a week ago and they were talking about growth. For those of you who might have seen President Trump's speech last night of 19 minutes, he made it short, and he talked about growth and what's going to happen over the next couple of years, and starting in the new year, January, February, March, April, the big new bill, and your tax money that's going to come back, big tax money, and kids getting $1,000 in their retirement fund, little kids, etc. I thought that was interesting, that here's ICSC last week saying there's going to be growth, and here's the president on TV, and he talked quickly, like he was a little mad, and he had a lot of stuff to get right in, but he didn't veer off his speech, he didn't insult anyone, and just kind of gave the facts. How much, Brian, do you think the president and his programs play along with ICSC's thinking that there's going to be growth next year?
I don't want to get political, as we could talk about every 4 years about how things change, but I do think what we're understanding is, under this current leadership, is the importance of energy, and the important from every retailer to every household to every company to every manufacturer. So some of the news just published today with our nuclear understanding, how we can create nuclear energy and do it in a clean, safe way. I think that is really refreshing, because I've been, as you know me for a long time, I've been saying that's really the only way that we can continue in this artificial intelligence world that we live in. Because, don't know if you know this, but if you ask your ChatGPT a question that it has to think about for the minute, that creates as much energy as burning a light bulb for half an hour. So it's a lot of energy. If we want to live this luxurious life of autonomous driving and all this, we have to solve these problems. So I think, those initiatives are great. I think if we can create, that employment and building things in America, and not relying on other sources of labor that tends to be not as fair and safe labor, and it's child labor in a lot of things. So bringing things back to America is a good thing under every leadership.
Exactly, it serves everybody. And to your point about the electricity, I did a little advisory assignment last week, which meant I got a week's pay. And I said, I was advised that instead of investing in AI, because there may be a bubble there, I might be best to start my little new stock portfolio in all the improvements and new inventions for the grid to make more electricity. So that's where I'm going to start going next. And also, right now, Booth, I want to make sure our announcer's mic is on. Just want John to take a little plug for when you're going to be the guest. We're doing a couple of shows for Christmas. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy your holidays, folks. Just a little announcer's plug on what you'll be talking about on our next program here on Brass City TV. John Frasco, Fidelity Finance.
Yes, we'll be discussing things, what people need to know about commercial lending, what a business needs to know in order to come up with a better business plan. We've discussed issues why commercial loans are more expensive than your traditional residential mortgage. And we'll also discuss the effect that AI will have on business. So it should be a very interesting show.
Right. Our guest now is an expert at financing because we don't get buildings sold without financing. Talk a little bit about what the retailers need for financing. And let's say they're going to open, you've had assignments that you had to go find 10 locations. A little bit of simply for this audience, how does financing move into that picture of you doing site selection?
It's a very complex stack. I'm glad you asked. So yeah, one of the meetings that I had was to understand how to help them grow through Connecticut. It's a brand, I'm not going to mention the name, still working on pitching the assignment, but my company, Atherton Real Estate Advisors, we can help this company expand into the markets that are ideal for the business model. But what happens unfortunately in the debt stack of franchise or retail real estate, if it's franchise driven, obviously if it's corporate credit, meaning if it's Walgreens credit, CVS credit, Walmart credit, Incredible credit, there's no need to discuss any, if it's great credit, right? In a tenant format, in a purchase, whatever the case may be. But franchise credit is a very independent driven on the individual. So to even obtain a lease without having very strong credit for a retail location is very difficult today. So that's not even talking about financing furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which are very hard to obtain lending today.
Simple answer for what furniture, fixtures, and equipment to the customer who's going in the store.
Yeah, so hoods, grills, seats, tables, all those types of things that can help in a restaurant format, that would be, but in any format, it could be desks and chairs and specific conference tables and all that. That could all be considered
FF&E.
FF&E, yes.
And John, you'll talk more about that in our next program.
Yes,
Wow.
but very difficult to finance today because we're all chasing deposits. As banks typically lend their own deposits, and that's been the historical model of how they can make money. But when you have little deposits because you've maybe invested in other things, you now have to go to what's called the Fed window and borrow at the Fed rate, which now you don't have as much of a margin. So there's banks that are, a majority of banks are very hesitant today to lend, and people don't know that. So it's more challenging for the retail industry because it's so franchise driven.
And folks, this is why I hang around with Brian. He's a smart young guy. And we'll talk with John Frasco on the next show about all this. And you mentioned credit. I'm going off my script here, but with that said, you mentioned CVS and Walgreens. And we have around Waterbury a Walgreens over near the mall that's closed. And how is their credit so good if CVS and Walgreens are closing stores?
Well, I just drove by that dark Walgreens, and as I lived in Woolkit at one point in my life, and my mom and my stepdad still does, I've driven by that over the years, and that is a great location. Unfortunately, the business models have changed for many of the retailers. Returns on sales or return on investment is ever so important. So oftentimes I should say, What retailers do is when they have challenging earnings to report to the shareholders, because remember, it's the shareholders that pretty much the stockholders, because they're publicly traded companies. So when they don't make as much money, or they overexpanded, or they can't control their expenses, what they typically do is they'll slash their bottom 5%, 10% performers. That location probably with a higher level of shrinkage, theft, because it was a very heavy pedestrian. It's Waterbury. There's a lot of density of walking and pedestrians, and it's obviously it can be safety can be questionable in all areas, anywhere today, especially. So that was probably a business decision that in many locations, and I don't know that one specifically, many locations they're still committed to rent, but are not occupying the space. So I don't know that specifics. You probably know as you're the local broker here, but that property is a great corner. It's just not going to perform. It hasn't performed well for Walgreens.
But the companies then, their overall credit is still good if you had
Fantastic.
a location for them in another neighborhood.
Fantastic, and they're growing. Don't get me wrong. Just because these retailers downsize in some markets, they're growing in others, right? It's cutting the fat or cutting the bottom performers and focusing on the top stellar performers. So that's really that focus, and it's usually the southeast of the country because, or the Midwest where the growing population is, because it's all about growing population.
Before I forget, I'm Tom Hill III, your host. This is BrianAtherton, Area Commercial Real Estate in Newtown. My website's tomhill.com. And this, if you want to see all these shows we've done here and at Strike Zone Studios, it's tomhillradio.com. And your website and your social media, Brian?
Our website is buyandsellcre.com. Social media, Atherton Real Estate Advisors, aria.com. Aria, look me up.
Okay, and we'll get to Mr. John, our announcer, shortly. Moving along on this program, because I'm never going to get all these questions in. Where am I here? Oh, would you talk about all the different venues that you've been over the years? And here's a little list of them. Or maybe I should just ask you about each one. The regionals in Hartford and Providence. Occasional luncheons. New York City in December, we just talked about that. And also, I mean, Las Vegas is one of its own. I think, what's the amount of people that show up in Las Vegas every May?
It's a lot.
35,000, 40,000, I think.
Used to be, and the numbers they're higher than they were, but I don't know that it's that high now. But that that is a tough trip because obviously with Las Vegas you have to have a little fun, and it's a long trip, especially if you're exhibiting. So I haven't been back to Vegas since COVID. I will be in 2026. So ICSC has inspired me so much from this refreshing refresh, which I thought was awesome. And really keeping that value proposition.
I like that, a refreshing refresh by BrianAtherton.
Yeah. So back to venues, it's all about relationships. It's all about trying to help people, trying to understand what they really need, as we are in commercial real estate, problem solvers, and that's why I excel in my business, you excel in your business, because we're very good at solving problems, and especially for those who have financial wealth in commercial real estate.
I'm a problem solver, just call me. So, we were at the New Haven Commercial Investment Division yesterday morning in Orange, yes. And it was out of 40 members, there was about 4 of us that went to the ICSC, and we gave tips on what worked for us, and I kind of facilitated that, didn't really get my 2 cents in, but you did, and Ken Ginsberg and a couple others. But for me, I had 3 meetings, one with an auto parts chain, and I had to check in with the broker on the relationship and make sure it was going to come through, and it went well.
Nice.
And then both of us had a couple different meetings with brokers that we had deals with that we were having trouble catching them. And this is how we walked 12 miles. But then again, I also said, besides the meeting, I'm going to just walk around and see what happens to me. And that was fun meeting people. How about you that day?
Same thing. What was really interesting, and I have to give ICSC tons of credit for this, because as a SIOR, I'm currently the chapter president of the Connecticut and Western Mass SIOR chapter. And we at the chapter have a strong affinity university alliance or a student experience with the University of Connecticut. So while I was at ICSC, seeing these young professionals from these large institutions, we know one from Northmark, we have a mutual friend, some from Atlantic Retail, huge, and I've seen these companies over the years just grow, and these young, talented people that have come locally from our market, it was so refreshing. But I saw a few University of Connecticut students that were going down to see their mentors, that I can't mention the name of the large publicly traded companies that they had these mentorships were with, but it was very impressive. So the combination of, that business to solidify those relationships so we can be financially gained, but also to see that legacy of that student, that next generation of that younger professional, and seeing them all in their roles as, Horvath and Tremblay, Bob Horvath and Tremblay started the company just 10 years ago, and look at how incredible they've done over the last decade.
He had 40 business tables in his booth. These
Unbelievable.
booths, he mentioned Atlantic, our friend Jack Lyman, packed. And we would walk to the booths to try to see some of our friends, and other times you couldn't see them. They were busy talking to people, or they were walking around the show. But really exhilarating. And I had that on my list, Brian, so we'll cut that out. And speaking of SIOR, Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, we're both designees. There's 4,000 of us in the world. We were in Vegas about 8 or 9 or 10 weeks ago. Oh, maybe it was last year. I lose track. We were in Kentucky last 8 or 10 weeks ago. But you're also, and I've been able to go on your coattails for some of these, you're also involved with the Yale College of Real Estate, NYU, I followed you there, and the Center for Real Estate and Urban Studies. Why do our industries need young people and good smart ones?
Yeah, so the Yale thing is still a work in progress. We have not solidified it. It's all about as a leader.
But they're taking your calls.
They took my calls. Right now, we're still just holidays. Holidays screws up everything. But as a leader, as a chapter president, as a leader of my company, as a leader of my family, as being a dad, first, most important thing is the legacy, and really to have that ability to mentor and to touch young, bright individuals. So I love to be exposed and immersed into a university environment, and these incredible universities that I never had the financial means to even attend, which I went to locally, Takeo Post at the time, now Post University, a great finance curriculum at the time, but to touch these young, bright individuals that may work for us in the future. We may be working for them and their companies that they're starting up, and that they may be the next Tesla, the next IBM. And it's just incredible to be able to meet people. So it's really my own personal knowledge base, and learning from others is the most important thing. So you can't learn from, I believe you have to immerse yourself into a culture. And that's why I go to NYU and take an opportunity to man a booth or speak engagement or a panel discussion.
It was a thrill to talk to students from all over the world about the real estate business. We were happy, and their professors came around, and we met another friend of ours, Brian Whitmer, who's a president of the New York chapter and a New Jersey real estate developer, and it was just so cool. Everybody wants to talk to everybody, and we all have gray hair, so we have to embrace the young people. Before I ask the next question, I just want to make sure that our announcer has any questions, or does Al too have any layman questions? Just feel free to wander in if you will, because you're a good question man. We have a nice staff here at Brass City TV. They work really hard, and we're so happy to be here. Now, on that note, Brian, why?
We have a question, Tom.
Oh, we have a question? Go ahead, John. Sorry.
One quick question for Brian. Brian, if you were to talk to somebody that was in college currently and they were interested in going into commercial real estate, what advice would you give them from your experience?
Wow, that's a good one. That is a great question.
Thank you.
Something that you're very welcome. Something that I didn't do was to really understand the value of a real mentor. And what do I mean by a mentor is somebody that can help you sit properly, someone who can help you speak properly, someone who can help you query properly, question, understand culture. We're talking about culture. Do you know in every culture, negotiations is a different style? So to understand and to learn from a mentor on, little things like how to tie a Windsor knot. My dad died when I was very young, so to have that mentor would have been very important to me. I had a couple of mentors, but I never really understood the value, John, of one true mentor. So I would give that advice to really, a offer of employment or something may sound very exciting or attractive, but if there's no mentorship behind it, you have to question it. Is it really something that's going to benefit you and you're going to learn from and elevate your life?
Yeah, a mentor really can accelerate your learning. I'm sure Tom and yourself would be very good mentors for some young college students. So if there's any out there that are interested, I would give these gentlemen a call. You'll probably find out the information that you give to you is probably very, very valuable. Probably, we could even say priceless.
You can find me at tomhill.com.
and buyandsellcre.com.
Right, Brian Atherton, Tom Hill, happy to be here, which rolls me into the next one. Thank you, John. And if I hope Al too gets a layman question before this is over. This leads me to who should join ICSC?
You know, it is, if you're in commercial real estate and you are a broker that leases and sells, I think everyone should attend ICSC. Why? You can understand demand. At the end of the, really what a good broker and a good transaction or a good analyst does in commercial real estate is they match a buyer with a seller, a landlord with a tenant, and half that equation is someone who wants to sell the asset, but the other is demand for the purchase or the leasing. So by attending ICSC, you can hear directly from the retail sources of where their demand level is. Are they interested, and why they're not interested? Well, it's probably that density of population in a 3-mile radius, or probably in a certain drive time, but you learn about demand. So I would say for everyone that wants to excel in the industry, and even small markets, we're a very small market. People, matter of fact, at the panel discussion the next day after ICSC, people were saying, well, gee, you attend ICSC, we don't see much in the way of Connecticut retail growth. And I say, yes, but there are pockets of growth. So understanding demand and speaking and talking it through with the retailers and understanding their thought process is very important.
And this goes back to John's question, John Frasco, who'll be coming up in the next program. The pocket, you talked about density and mixing live, work, and play. That pocket of density would be down in Cheshire on the Southington line with the Whole Foods and the apartments and the whole 9 yards. Does that cover what you were kind of trying to say?
Yes, and also it was done at Quarry Walk as well. I mean, they have
Oxford?
a doctor's office, they've got a shopping center, they've got retail, they've got fast food places, and they got the residential. I would think that it's an excellent fit, especially if there was an elderly population. Everything you need is right within walking distance of
And
your
Brian,
residence.
we saw the Quarry Walk people down walking the floor.
Yeah, we know the Haynes family, Tom Haynes, and the developer very well, and they did a tremendous job. But yeah, live, work, and play creates less traffic congestion, right? If you can walk to the restaurant, there's some great restaurants at Quarry Walk, some incredible ones. You can walk to it from your residence and not have to congest in car on the roads. So that makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways.
Yeah,
Right.
virtually you probably don't even need a vehicle because everything you need is.
arm's length away.
If you're lucky. Is that microphone close enough? I hope they're hearing you in there.
Back to that autonomous vehicle, and back to the need for vehicles, or each having 2 vehicles or 1.5 vehicles or 1 vehicle. Is it really needed, especially as we do really understand the value of where we want to be, which is close to transit, close to access, close to employment, and close to peace and harmony. So
Don't mess with my gas-powered all-wheel drive Buick, Brian.
never.
Okay, they talked about mentors and good stuff there a minute ago. Oh, do we have a layman question? You have priority. This is Al, too.
Hello. My question is, as more stores close since more people are ordering online, what happens to the workers displaced by automation and tech? Is there any consideration for the people left behind, store managers, store employees?
Hey, may I take that one?
Yes, you may.
All right, great. No, that's a great question. AI and efficiency and how we are changing is an ever-going conversation. What AI, in my opinion, is doing, at least as I see in my businesses, in my world, is taking out much of the redundant tasks that, yes, someone had to do, but it's not a quality of a task. Meaning it's either so redundant, it's really not a thoughtful task, it's not a creative task, or it's not a solving problem task. So I think there's going to be many more opportunities of problem-solving employment for many individuals that are unfortunately stuck in that sort of task, that another widget, build that another widget, where if AI can take that burden off, we will all live a more bountiful and blessed life. So I really do believe that we are just experiencing this initial shock. Yes, store closures are not necessarily tied to what's happening with AI. They are just because, as we know, some are not performing. Starbucks went through a major change recently. It's all public information that now We heard that they are now reinvigorating some of that new expansion where they just kind of shut it off in the last quarter because their earnings weren't that well. But AI displacing certain redundant tasks for employees, I think will benefit society in the long run.
Okay, and I'll just add that internet sales right now are about 16% of all retail sales, and they're projected next year to go to about 20%. So they are moving up, but 80% are bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Okay.
People don't know that. They don't realize that it's such a low percentage of the actual overall sales in the economy.
And then on our Tom Hill Live show for safety right now, all three of us had some dangerous spots trying to drive over here. I almost clipped a lady in dark clothing walking up Lakewood Road with no reflection, and the roads are dark. Announcer, you had a problem on the way.
Yeah, similar to what you were saying. I was driving along the road, and there was a woman all dressed in black carrying a bag, and she was really close to the edge of the line between where the cars drive. I really didn't see her until I got right on top of her. I mean, all dressed in black. She
All
blended
kids,
right
you
in.
need to get reflective clothing so you don't get run over. Very dangerous, and I'm not lecturing. And Brian, you had almost couldn't get here for the danger on the highways.
Yes, and I would say that visibility is always distracted driving, and that's why once we embrace autonomous driving, and those sensors can sense what we can't see. So pedestrian deaths and all that, as I lost a family member, my brother, to a pedestrian death, got hit walking on a road. So with technology, it's very scary, but with technology that will help society.
I think that people should. There was an old thing when the kids used to go out for Halloween trick or treating. They used to say carry a flashlight with you and shine it on the ground, so that put a light, and it was easier to see where the children
Absolutely.
were.
Anything you can do to be safe. There's potholes galore that'll take your front wheel off. And driving, I was involved at Lime Rock Park as an announcer for 13 seasons, and now and then back at my WATR days, I would have the pace car driver come in and give safety and try to entertain, and he'd go to also to all the schools and teach the kids that these cars are 5,000-pound weapons, and warning people, that the parents, that they shouldn't buy their kids WRX Subarus because it's a real race car. But the point he made, it was paying attention and driving and talking to yourself. Anybody in front of me? Anybody in back of me? Is that guy got a signal light? And looking for the potholes in the road. So I think this attentive driving and talking to yourself is a good thing. And do I have a couple more little things? Oh, all the scooters that don't have registrations or insurance that are all over the place. I saw a guy driving 40 miles an hour down the sidewalk on the corner of North Main and Homer Street coming here last week. And then the walkers. And these scooters aren't registered. They have no insurance, and they're traffic hazards. So we as drivers have to be super, super careful. Anybody got anything to add to that before we move on?
I'll just keep the phone down. Don't get distracted.
Yeah, I give myself a lesson. Put the phone down, and I'm in the habit of pulling off the road and in a safe place and making my phone calls rather than driving and try to talk speaker free. You're right. The distracted driving thing is just awful. Anything else, announcer?
No, not of that. I mean, definitely too many people on the cell phone while driving. You only can do one thing at a time. If you want to talk, pull over and talk. If you want to drive, put the cell phone down.
I've seen more lately with cell phones to their ears as driving, and I thought that most vehicles have Bluetooth technology, but I guess there are, and these are some newer models, so either the owners, they may be just borrowing the car, but to not take the time to connect to the Bluetooth is very dangerous to hold a phone today. I mean, you shouldn't be talking very limited in the car, but to hold the device is an extra layer of distraction.
It is, and we're just trying to give a little public service announcement here at Brass City TV. We're talking about the International Council of Shopping Centers, BrianAtherton Area Real Estate, Tom Hill, TomHill.com, and TomHillRadio.com. And John Frasco, just a little about you.
Commercial broker for Fidelity Finance Solutions for all your commercial needs.
All right, so Brian, let's talk a little bit about the diversity of different markets in Connecticut. You're over in Newtown and Fairfield County. I'm here in Waterbury, and we always hear that Eastern Connecticut, because of the submarines, is going great. Greenwich is still attracting from people from New York. We dissect some of these different markets, and maybe as an ICSC member, maybe how you look at them.
Yeah, so we specialize, my company, in Fairfield County and New Haven County, Lower New Haven County. but cover Fairfield County on both the 95 corridor and the 85 corridor. Connecticut has its pockets of right now, so just kind of what we're experiencing from a market standpoint is, believe it or not, there's a shortage of quality space. Retail, I have a retailer that we were at a space yesterday that I might consider for this retailer, but depending on the market, there are different levels of inventory because there have been different levels of, believe it or not, even office. You look at different, Darien, David Genovese's product, we had him as his panelist, and you heard it from him that he had more successful by 25% of a financial premium of leasing his whole office development than he even projected. So, overall, as long as we can keep population growing in the state and continue to understand how to incubate that New York, Fairfield County, that capital out of New York. Because people, it's very expensive to live in New York and New Jersey with the property taxes, and operating expenses are much higher than our market. So it's a no-brainer to come to Connecticut, come to Fairfield County, and we can help you with that.
And just break down for the audience what are operating expenses that you're talking about?
So operating expenses in commercial real estate are any of those taxes, maintenance like plowing, landscaping, repairs, those expenses associated with every property. So those in the industry, we call them operating expenses, or OpEx.
And we had one of our speakers at the SIOR meeting in Amarante on the shore a few weeks ago. You have a new we do have a new insurance sponsor, and the audience is having concerns that all these insurances for everything are going way up. But that particular sponsor had kind of a tip for us that they were able to shop other insurance companies, and she was a little bit positive about putting yourself with the right company, and then you wouldn't be subject to the increases that everybody is seeing. Am I making any sense on that?
Yes, that was IMA. That was Julie Maloney from IMA representing, and yes, so depending insurance. So that is an operating expense that I was speaking with a client today, that their insurance increased about 18% just last year.
Ugh.
It's a property in Southington, Connecticut. It's a restaurant. I may have mentioned it to you before. And we're just discussing, the property taxes and the future of how you can appeal, or you can try to understand or try to work with the municipality and try to better that tax burden. But that increase, along with, you think about it, the cost of goods sold, which is the food, if it's a restaurant, the labor, the widgets that you're selling, whatever it is more expensive today. So those increased operating expenses with increased insurance, increased utility costs are really cumbersome on the tenant.
And there's been and for those of you who want to understand problems in Connecticut and also the cost of electricity and housing, Chris Powell, who is syndicated to the Hearst Medias now, which owns the Republican American, has done some great stories on breaking this stuff down and easy to read. And as Brian says, I think there's a bit of a shortage in most segments of property. There's still people that want office space, but there's not a lot of good space left. What office space is around is pretty kind of tired, but developers want to turn that into housing, but you also need to know what the rules are, and we're still all learning about the governor's new housing policies. And I know you represent big developers that like to build apartments. You talked about an international customer you have looking for something now. Where do you see the governor's housing bill adding to helping solve some of these shortages or trouble to get something developed?
So 15 years ago, I believe it was, that I used to go to the legislative office building and testify.
In Hartford.
In Hartford, Connecticut, our capital. And testify. I was not the legislative chair of the Connecticut Association of Realtors at that time. This was my own personal opinion as a professional in the industry. And I used to testify on how important housing is and how important the D word is, that density, because Connecticut, with the 169 towns, has many inefficiencies. When you have 169 Board of Education, you have 169 zoning regulations, you have 169 health departments. So our state is a similar size of most other states' counties. And county rule government is the same rules for the entire county. So most other states have size of Connecticut counties all have the same laws. So think about it. You wouldn't have that much redundancy. So with zoning, with 169 towns, that's with 169 different zoning regulations. That's why many of the retailers at ICSC have said in the past, Connecticut's like brain damage because I can't just follow one rule, right?
Yep.
There's all different rules in every town, and I have to hire a different specialist, a different advisor, et cetera. But housing and the governor's bill, so 15 years ago, I was pounding the table on how important it is, and I was ridiculed, and I think people shot arrows at me because they said, we don't want density. And I said, well, if you can't house the people that we're working to educate, i.e. those young, brilliant people that we were talking about before, if they're moving to other markets because of employment and housing opportunities, right? Because we don't have them here. We have some employment opportunities. We don't have many housing opportunities. So ever so important. Unfortunately, as you know, politics, making the sausage is very difficult. So the governor had to create that hammer because 830-G, which is the appeal act, was the only mechanism in which a developer can really increase density from what the local town has created as their local guidelines and their zoning regulations. And not everybody wants changes and wants more people in their town.
It was interesting stuff. Again, Chris Powell, look him up. He could tell you about a nice story on the housing bill. And one of his criticisms also was that the housing bill did not read to or help the people, the homeless. And I think he was saying we had something like 3,500 homeless people. And that's another problem that's got to be taken care of. And I guess a real good country that is patriotic takes care of the people that are having problems. So I hope we get to that. We got a few minutes left to go. We're talking to BrianAtherton about commercial real estate and especially about the International Council of Shopping Centers, where we both went, that educates us, motivates us, gives us customers. And before John talked about mentors, our announcer, I'll get to you in just a second, on January 8th, we're going to have Don Smith, the speech tamer, and I met him with John again at one of your marketing meetings. So we'll have him on, a mentor on how to teach you to speak well, and he's got a little ebook out. You can find it at the Speech Tamer. I bought it for all my kids, and I'm looking at it as well. Really good. John, go ahead, our announcer.
Yeah, I got one more question for you, Brian. One thing I noticed was a lot of towns where you said they don't want to have the density increase or have too many people within their town. What I noticed was there was let's say a trend where they were allowing maybe the over 50 housing, where people that were over age 50, they'd come into the housing, and their justification behind it was they pay their taxes, but they're not putting another student in the school time, and they're not utilizing any resources. I mean, that's all well and good, but don't you think that it's affecting the younger hurting the younger sector of the population, because now these people that are just married or going out and working, they don't have any housing to go to?
It's a very good question. So if you are utilizing a site, which is a piece of land, which is ideal for building a housing product of some sort, either 55 plus or workforce housing or apartment or condos, whatever it may be, you're utilizing that site for what is for a use that there could be a better use for it, right? So it's an economic decision, it's a society decision, and that's where zoning kind of comes into play. But the 50, one has to be careful. The 55 plus, John, you can't have too much of that 55 plus because there needs to be that employment. And yes, it's because we believe that it doesn't have an impact on the school systems. And that's why we really lean towards more of the 55 plus, and in many communities where they look and they don't embrace more densification of market rate housing or affordable housing or workforce housing or incentive housing, however they've worded it, right, in that municipality. At the end of the day is you have to have a diversity of housing stock. You have to be able to house the young, the middle. It's called in many parts of the country CCRs, or community or continuous care communities. Continuous care retirement communities, where you can have and enjoy every single phase of your retirement of life, of limited care, some care, acute care, that type of lifestyle. So you'll see overbuilding just because of where we now have some 55 plus residents that are staying in Connecticut a little bit longer because we're having children a little bit longer, like myself, in life. I don't think it's a trend. I think people with capital, if it's expensive to live and die in Connecticut, will move out of Connecticut. So one has to be careful not to develop too much of the 55 plus. Really be able to convert that to a market rate in the event of a change is probably most important.
However, thoughtful answer, by the way, Brian. Thank you for coming on. We have such an aging population that I'm seeing new 55 communities popping up because there are people that don't want to move to Florida and they want the 55. They don't want to be in kids' neighborhoods. So the other side of that, guys, can you put the camera on the book again, the ICSC magazine that comes out regularly? It's really action-packed if you want to learn about the industry. Commerce plus Community today, and the current one is Mall to Mixed-Use Reinvention. Brian and I were in one of these malls in Hudson Yards a couple of weeks ago at the ICSC. They have a podcast, and that podcast, and I've had him as a guest on WATR for those of you who followed me over the years. Tom McGee, he's been around a long time, great speaker, and he's got a podcast that goes, and we're hoping that he's going to put this on here, our podcast on there, but it's called From Where I Sit, and you can go to icsc.com and find it. Brian, since we only have a couple minutes to go, would you give just a 1-minute wrap-up on your long history and enjoyment of going to ICSC, and then remind people where you're from?
Yes, so this new ICSC reinvention is refreshing. I'm looking forward to participating in more venues, Vegas especially, haven't been there in a while, but I'd like to see this growth continue. As you know, any questions that any members would have or anything in our market in Connecticut, BrianAtherton, Atherton Real Estate Advisors, glad to help you out in Fairfield County or Southern New Haven County, Connecticut.
Okay, you and your autonomous car are dismissed now.
Oh, thank you so much. Drive away.
We're going to have John Frasco on next, and that'll be, I think, for the Christmas show. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. We appreciate you all tuning in. I'm Tom Hill. My website's tomhill.com. John Frasco has been our announcer, and we're going to talk with him in just a few minutes about all types of financing, which will be another show. I'm sorry, we're trying to cut a couple because of everybody's busy schedules. And coming up, I just also want to remind you, we have a great show planned for January 8th live at 7 p.m. on Brass City TV. That'll be Don Smith, who's a Chamber of Commerce member and a member of John Frasco's networking clubs, which when he comes on, we'll talk about those. And he's called The Speech Tamer. You can Google him, thespeechtamer.com, I think it is. He has an ebook, and he'll be here January 8th. And we hope to be here as long as humanly possible. And thank you. We're Waterbury people and hoping to drive activity to our great area. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. See you next week.